Trump's Department of Justice and beleaguered Attorney General Pam Bondi are scrambling in the aftermath in the last 12 hours of a decision that rocked their world, had Lindsey Halligan fired as the Eastern District of Virginia prosecutor as being illegally appointed, and sent the indictments of James Comey and Letitia James off into the world of dismissed without prejudice. Although for James Comey, it's unlikely that a judge like the main judge in the case, Judge Nachmanoff, is going to actually allow him to be reindicted. I think the case is over for James Comey, slightly different for Letitia James, but the Department of Justice is scrambling. You can always tell by the comments made, the public comments made by Pam Bondi and Carolyn Leavitt, the press secretary, when they know that they're sunk, their ship has sunk. We'll cover it all right here on Legal AF on Tuesday. Judge Currie's order, a senior status judge appointed by Bill Clinton, sits in South Carolina, usually came up to the Eastern District of Virginia just for the sole purpose of deciding whether Lindsey Halligan was properly appointed under Section 546 or not. And she declared that she wasn't. And I love the fact that the judge used conservative judges, right-wing judges, MAGA judges, if you will, against the Department of Justice, citing to Samuel Alito when he was in the White House counsel's office, and he gave an opinion about Section 546 that said a president can only appoint one acting interim U.S. attorney under Section 546, not multiple interim U.S. attorneys. But she also cited, as we expected, to Judge Aileen Cannon, Donald Trump's favorite federal judge down in Florida, who got him out from under Mar-a-Lago, finding that special counsel Jack Smith was improperly appointed. She had brought that up in court, but she stuck it in her brief as the reason why she found that once a prosecutor is improperly appointed, then everything that flows from that prosecutor's actions is voided, like the indictment. And then for James Comey, she went one step further and she said, he's got a statute of limitations issue. You had to have indicted him within 5 years. Statute of limitations has now run. And that thing that Halligan did in the room by herself, that wasn't an indictment because it was voided. So it didn't stop the clock on statute of limitations. James Comey is done. Let me read to you from it, and let me show you some of the clips that have now come out as they scramble. First reporting that came out, you're here on Legal AF on Tuesday, hit the free subscribe button. First thing that came out was that they didn't know how to sign their papers anymore in court. Should we put Lindsey Halligan's name on there? Should we not put Lindsey Halligan's name on there? And once Pam Bondi figured out they were taking Lindsey Halligan's name off because the judge said she's fired and that the position is now vacant and it needs to be filled by the judges of the Eastern District of Virginia. There's 18 of them. They got to get together this week. They got to pick a new prosecutor, in order to do their job. And that process of district judges picking prosecutors, Judge Currie reminded everybody, goes back to our Civil War. So let's get back to the order, but let me show you the clips first. Pam Bondi, again, whistling past the graveyard. She got hammered in the order yesterday. We have it up on Legal AF Substack. Bondi did. Judge said you can't ratify illegal acts by a non-U.S. attorney who is void from the day she was selected. You can't backdate that and ratify that, Pam Bondi. And Pam Bondi, how could you possibly ratify something when you didn't even have the complete transcript until the court ordered the federal government to go get the audio transcript and have it transcribed? How can you backdate and ratify the behavior of somebody if you don't even know what they did? And Pam Bondi, though, goes yesterday during a press conference and said, Lindsey Halligan's a fine prosecutor, blah, blah, blah. It's something like that. Let's play the clip.
What happens to U.S. Attorney Halligan now? Will she remain in her position while the appeals process plays out? And does that threaten to upend other cases in the office if you guys don't win on appeal?
It does not. We have made Lindsey Halligan a special U.S. attorney. So she is in court. She can fight in court just like she was, and we believe we will be successful on appeal. And I'll tell you, Lindsey Halligan, I talked to all of our U.S. attorneys, the majority of them around the country, and Lindsey Halligan is an excellent U.S. attorney, and shame on them for not wanting her in office. Thank you all.
And Carolyn Leavitt, of course, at her press conference has to attack the partisan ruling of a 40-year federal judge who nobody had any problems with until she ruled against Donald Trump and his pick of Lindsey Halligan. Judge Currie.
No, because Lindsey Halligan was legally appointed, and that's the administration's position. I know there was a judge who is clearly trying to shield Letitia James and James Comey from receiving accountability, and that's why they took this unprecedented action to throw away the indictments against these two individuals. But the Department of Justice will be appealing very soon, and it is our position that Lindsey Halligan is extremely qualified for this position, but more importantly, was legally appointed to it.
Judge Currie's doing just fine in South Carolina. Senior status judge, probably pushing close to retirement. And now suddenly she's a partisan hack that's trying to undermine accountability. Oh, woe is me. Now, James Comey has also come out with his own clip, similar to the one the night of the indictment, where he declared his innocence and said, "You want to come after me? Although I don't think so." Based on a footnote in the opinion. I don't think that's happening, as I've said before. Let's play James Comey as well.
I'm grateful that the court ended the case against me, which was a prosecution based on malevolence and incompetence, and a reflection of what the Department of Justice has become under Donald Trump, which is heartbreaking. But I was also inspired by the example of the career people who refused to be part of this travesty. It cost some of them their jobs, which is painful, but it preserved their integrity, which is beyond price. And I know they will serve again. I was very lucky that some of the best lawyers in America stepped forward to represent me. I hope they serve as an example to more and more lawyers, especially at some of the big firms, to participate in protecting our liberty, protecting the rule of law. And my family and friends were always with me, and luckily for me, include some of those great lawyers. This case mattered to me personally, obviously, but it matters most because a message has to be sent that the President of the United States cannot use the Department of Justice to target his political enemies. I don't care what your politics are, you have to see that as fundamentally un-American and a threat to the rule of law that keeps all of us free. I know that Donald Trump will probably come after me again, and my attitude is going to be the same. I'm innocent, I am not afraid, and I believe in an independent federal judiciary, the gift from our founders that protects us from a would-be tyrant. When I was a kid, my parents would wake us up for school every morning by snapping open the shades and saying, "Time to rise and shine and show the world what you're made of." Well, it's that time, America. It's time to stand up and show the fools who would frighten us, who would divide us, that we're made of stronger stuff, that we believe in the rule of law, that we believe in the importance of doing things by the law. So stand tall, shine, and keep the faith.
Okay, now some of my favorite points in the order you can find on page 19 over to 20. She's going through what is the sort of remedy. We call the remedy, you have a constitutional or statutory violation, in this case, an invalid U.S. attorney. What do you do about their actions after it? And under the heading, dismissal of the indictment is appropriate as the remedy, she says, in a citing to Aileen Cannon's decision in Mar-a-Lago, in such a case, the proper remedy is invalidation of the ultra vires act taken by the actor. Ultra vires is a fancy term of saying something that is outside the law, outside the norm, outside authority or approval. She cites the U.S. versus Trump of the many U.S. versus Trump cases, this one being the Mar-a-Lago case. And she quotes Judge Cannon, invalidation follows directly from the government's actors' lack of authority to take the challenge action in the first place. That is, winning the merits of the constitutional challenge is enough, said Judge Cannon. Now, I knew Judge Cannon was going to come up because when U.S. Attorney Whitaker, who used to work with Pam Bondi in Florida as the Solicitor General of Florida, now in the U.S. Attorney's Office, when he was there doing battle with Judge Currie a couple weeks ago during the hearing, she brought up Judge Cannon. And she said, Judge Currie said to Whitaker, "Are you familiar with Aileen Cannon's ruling in the Mar-a-Lago case?" "Yes." "Is that precedent here? Should I be following it?" Because she bounced special counsel Jack Smith, because she ruled he needed to be confirmed through a Senate confirmation process. First judge in the history of America in almost 250 years that said that a special attorney or special counsel prosecutor needed to be confirmed by the Senate, not just appointed as an inferior officer under the U.S. under the Attorney General. But she quoted it for the remedy, dismissal of the indictment. He said, well, it's not precedent here. She also cited and peppered her order with other references to other conservative right-wing justices like Gorsuch and Thomas, just to say, hey, I've done my research. You guys say the same thing. And then you've got the big issue that's coming up here a couple of days before Thanksgiving. When are the 18 judges of the Eastern District of Virginia going to rule and pick a U.S. attorney to head that office? Because that's the next step. Now, you're going to see me again here today or tomorrow with an emergency appeal to the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals, asking them to stop the order, block the order, keep Lindsey Halligan in until they get a chance to brief it. They may do an administrative order because it's the holidays. They may not. I don't think they're going to disturb the indictment part. I think the indictment's dismissed. But you might see an administrative stay, or you may not. Then they'll have to rush through Chief Justice Roberts up to the United States Supreme Court for another emergency. They'll have to drop their plates of turkey and dressing and stuffing and all that, and they'll stop feeding their fat faces and make a decision here that Trump needs because he wants to save Lindsey Halligan. Short answer: I don't think she gets saved. I think Judge Currie and two other federal judges, one in Nevada, one in New Jersey, are right also on all these crazy attempts to continue to appoint acting interim U.S. attorneys beyond the 120-day period and to try to avoid the appointment clause of the Constitution to appoint and have confirmed by the Senate a U.S. attorney. That's what our separation of powers says. That's what our rulemaking says. So we're going to have to follow all of that late-breaking, fast-breaking story here on Legal AF. So hit the subscribe button, come over to Legal AF Substack where I posted all of these orders, and I'll continue to update you. And not to leave a cliffhanger, the Letitia James case is different because there's not a statute of limitations running. See, most criminal statutes have a statute of limitations. Could be 5 years, could be 10 years, could be 3 years. It just depends on the statute. Some really heinous crimes have no statute of limitations, like murder, treason, that type of thing. But perjury and what we call a 1001 violation in Congress, which is lying to Congress, which is what Comey was indicted for, has a 5-year statute of limitations. That was the mad rush, right? That was the fire drill to try to get it all done by September 5, 2025. That's why Lindsey Halligan went in like a day before. But she blew it, and she went in alone. See, that's another mistake by Pam Bondi. Why wasn't anybody sophisticated who knew what they were doing as a career prosecutor next to her to save the indictment? That was one of the things that Judge Currie said. She was by herself. She didn't even have backup. Even a cop writing a speeding ticket calls for backup. But that's 5 years, and we've blown that date already. And if the first indictment is invalid, not just effective, because it was issued or obtained by an invalidly appointed person, that doesn't stop the clock on statute of limitations. And we're now at the end of November 2025. 5 years is over. But Letitia James is mortgage fraud, and there's still plenty of time on the clock. Doesn't mean the case can't get dismissed by the actual judge in the case, Judge Walker, for vindictive prosecution or other defects in the grand jury process or other defects in the indictment, but not statute of limitations. So the without prejudice part of the dismissals has a different impact on Comey than it does necessarily on Letitia James. Although I think she's got a winning defense either way. And then lastly, in terms of just sort of the procedural aspects of all of this, if Currie is right, I believe she is, then a new U.S. attorney is going to have to look at the file for even Letitia James and decide whether to go forward. And I'm not sure that's a foregone conclusion with a new person sitting in that seat. So we'll follow it. I'm glad you're here. Until my next report, I'm Michael Popok. I'm Michael Popok, and I got some big news for our audience. Most of you know me as the co-founder of Midas Touch's Legal AF and the Legal AF YouTube channel, or as a 35-year national trial lawyer. Now, building on what we started together on Legal AF, I've launched a new law firm, the Popok Firm, dedicated to obtaining justice through compassionate and zealous legal representation. At the Popok Firm, we are focused on obtaining justice for those who have been injured or damaged by a life-altering event by securing the highest dollar recoveries. I've been tirelessly fighting for justice for the last 35 years, so my own law firm organically building on my Legal AF work just feels right. And I've handpicked a team of top-tier trial fighters and settlement experts throughout all 50 states known as big auto injury attorneys who have the know-how to beat heartless insurance companies, corporations, government entities, and their attorneys. Big Auto's attorneys working with my firm are rock stars in their respective states and collectively responsible for billions of dollars in recoveries. So if you or a loved one have been on the wrong side of a catastrophic auto, motor vehicle, rideshare, or truck accident, suffered a personal injury, or been the victim of medical malpractice, employment harassment or discrimination, or suffered a violation of your civil and constitutional rights, then contact the Popok Firm today at 1-877-POPOK-AF or by visiting my website at www.thepopokfirm.com and fill out a free case evaluation form. And if we determine that you have a case and you sign with us, we don't get paid unless you do. The Popok Firm, fighting for your justice every step of the way.